Alright, so let's continue. And now let's first implement the function of going to the next screen when the user clicks on the continue button that we have over here. So for that, let's head back over here in the cart panel where we have the panel component. So we need to have a state. Actually, we already have the state. We just need to pass down the function which allows us to change the state. So for that, I'm gonna copy the same thing. Let's pass it down as a prop, but for the name, let's go with change panel, which would be this function. And now within the cart component, the cart component, let's destructure this function, which is change panel. And now where we have continue right over here, let's pass down on click, which would be a callback function. We need to call the change panel, and for the value we can go with a hard-coded value of 1. And if we do that, let's get back, and over here we have the continue. And now that I think of it, maybe we should not be able to go to the next screen if there are no books in the cart. Obviously it doesn't make any sense to place an empty order, like an order with no items. So for that, what we can do is we have the books in cart. So over here, let's pass down disabled, which is a prop, and we can just do the length of it. So if this is 0, we will reverse the value with the logical operator. And now if we take a look, this should be disabled, so that's good. Now let's add something, and there we have it enabled. So if I click on it now, there we are on the next page, which is perfect. So now let's do the same thing for the back button that we have in the enter details. So for that, let's get to the enter details. It's gonna get the the prop that we care about is just the change panel, at least for now. So we will be destructuring it at the top, and where we have the icon button with the back arrow, let's pass down on click to be of, again, the same, like a similar thing, but for the value we can set it to be of about, well, actually 0. There's nothing to think about it. So now if I click on the back, there we are in the back screen, and there we are in the next one. So that's perfect. All right, so there's actually one other thing which we should do. So suppose if the user is on this screen, enter details, and if they close the drawer and if they try to open it again, it's gonna remain on the respective screen, like the one which was last set, like last state. I hope you get the point. So the thing is, let's do one thing. Let's reset the value if the drawer gets closed. So for that, and the reason is pretty simple, because suppose that from the cart we have an item and we go to the next screen, and if they close the panel and if they remove the items from the cart, they will still be on the next screen, which is not good, because there are no items in the cart for pretty obvious reason. So for that, let's actually do one thing, where we have the cart panel and where we have the close panel, which is this thing. So let's create a function which will be called when the user clicks on the when the drawer gets closed. So for that, let's create a function called handle close panel. In the end, we will still be doing the same thing of calling the close panel in such a way, but before that we can do set active panel to be of 0, so that we are setting it back to be of 0. And now let's call this one instead of close panel. So now if we take a look, let's see, let's add something, check it out. Let's go to the next page, next screen, and if now we close it, as you can see, for a split second we did see that thing. Like, anyways, the point is we are back on the first one. So that's great. Now let's actually work on the state for the input elements that we have over here. Now the thing is, for this we need to have a state, obviously. So where should we create it? Should we create the state right over here? If we do that, there will be a few cons. The most obvious one would be that if the component, like whenever the component will get unmount, so suppose if we go back to the previous screen, that's when the component will be unmounted, because in the cart panel we are displaying the panel in respect to the state that we have over here. So if it is 1 and if it gets changed to be of 0, then it's going to be an entirely different component, which is the cart one, instead of the enter details. So that means the enter details will be unmounted, and the component which gets unmounted, it will obviously lose its state because it's component state that we are using. So it means that we need to have the state somewhere else. Otherwise, like, it's again, it depends upon the use case. Like, we can obviously have the state, but that would lead to a very inconvenient user experience, because suppose if the user goes back to the home page, then they would have to kind of re-enter all the details. Although it's a pretty simple application, but let's not tamper the user experience in any way. Let's not leave any room for that. So I think we should be creating a state right in our home page, and we will just be passing down the function to the enter details. So let's actually do that. So within the index, which is within the pages directory, over here let's create the state, and this one is gonna be enter details form, and the function to be set enter details form. So instead of creating a separate state for each of the input element, like for full name, email address, instead of doing that, we will be having the state of an object where we're going to have properties for each of these fields. So let's actually do that over here. So the first one is full name, which would be an empty string. The second one is email. The third one is contact. The fourth one is address, in such a way. And now we just need to pass down these two to the cart panel component. So let's do that over here. Instead of the set enter details form, we will be passing a different function. Let's just abstract the logic right over here. So firstly, let's pass down this form, and now let's actually create the function which will update the state. So the function that we are going to create will be called whenever the user changes anything on any of these input elements. We will be calling just the same function, and it will be structured in a way that it's going to take the name of that input field and respectively update the state. So over here, let's call the function to be const handle change form, something like this. So we're going to get the event object, the synthetic event, and we will be updating the set enter details form. Let's pass down the old value. Let's destructure the old value. Let me just do it in such way, old form. And now from the event object that we have over here, we will be getting the name of the element, like the input field, as well as the new value. So over here, event dot target dot name, and similarly the same thing for the value. So that's perfect. Now let's pass this one to the cart panel that we have over here, which would be form enter details change on what should we call? Naming gets tough when there are too many things to pass down. I don't know what's happening today. So let's call it on form change. Let's just do that. We just have a single form, so this would be pretty self-explanatory that like what form we are pointing with this thing. So now let's actually get to the card panel. Let's destructure this right at the top, and we're gonna pass it down along with the enter details form. So that's the two things that we have to destructure. And now let's pass them down over here. In such a way, let's actually get to the enter details, and we need to destructure these two. Right, yep, these two. So let's get to the enter details, let's destructure these two, and now let's bind them, like bind the state with the respective input element. So over here, starting with the first one, let's first set the value of it to be enter details form dot the name, like the same thing that we have over here. We need to make sure that it is exactly the same as what we have. So the first one is enter details, well actually it is full name, so that's a good thing that we cross-checked it right at the beginning. And now the other part is now we also have to pass down the name. So this name has to be the same one that we have over here, because we will be extracting it right over here while updating the state. So the name has to be exactly this thing. So over here the name is gonna be full name, and the on change is gonna be the on form change function that we added. So now let's actually copy the same thing and let's pass it down to all the other input elements. We have 4, I guess. We have 4. So now we just need to update, we just need to change the value. So let's do that. So the other one is gonna be email. Then we have contact. Then we have address in such a way. So now let's save it, let's close it up, let's open up the console, and let's get to the index page and let's log this thing to the console. So we already have a log, let's pass it down in such a way. And if we take a look at the console, let's clear it out, add something, let's get over here. If we go to the other screen and let's try to enter something. So yep, that is indeed working, which is perfect. Full name, email, contact, address, everything is working the way that it should be, like it should work. So let's also check if we close the drawer and if we get back, we should be having the same thing. So that is perfect. We are persisting the state. All right, so I think now we just need to work on the server side. Let's actually get to the server side. And at this point, we will be, we are going to send the confirmation mail to the user, which also means that we also have to check the email address, like on the front end, in terms of the, like whether it is actually an email address. And there's actually one other thing which I've been thinking about. In the enter details, where we have the placeholder, we can actually change it to be of label so that it actually looks pretty nice, as you can see. Or should we keep it as placeholder? I think this looks much better because you know what the field is, even if it has value. And let's actually increase the spacing to be of 4. I think that's perfect. Let's actually target this element, this label that we have. So this is, let's actually see NPU. So we can target this thing, MUI form label -root. So let's actually do that in the theme where we have the components. So we're gonna target MUI form input, sorry, MUI form label, style overrides, and this one is root. So we can just set the font family as well as the weight to be of this. And as you can see that this thing is it is repeated many times, this thing. So we could have done it in a better way. How about like Lato font, something like this. It's just JS, so we can kind of do it in this way. So let's actually do it right now. And the Lato font, what we can do is we can just replace this thing with Lato font, the same thing over here as well as over here and even over here, right? So now if we save it, let's see, and yep, that looks perfect. All right, so I can suspect my system is lagging. Let's continue with this thing. I kind of need to think about what would be the next step, so let's do that in the next video. Thank you. Yep.